calmed her down and said, please, Katie, stop. Please, Katie, please stop. And she was in the bed, and I kind of walked around and tried to calm her down, and I went on my knees and begged her to stop, please.
You went on your knees?
I went on my knees.
And you begged her to stop?
Yes.
So what did she say?
Said, fuck you.
What happened then?
She hit me.
With what?
It's a glass.
Did you know that? Did she hit you with the glass?
Yes.
And where did she hit you with the glass?
Right on my head.
When she hit you with the glass, did you get cut?
Yes, I bled.
What did you do then?
I snapped. I kind of blacked out.
What did you do?
I grabbed.
Katie McClain was the kind of person who made you feel at ease the moment she walked into a room. A mother of 3, a Reiki Master, and someone who believed in the healing power of love. Katie seemed to have it all until the morning of May 15th, 2020. That day, she vanished without a trace. And just as mysteriously, a message started circulating among her friends, one that shook them to their core. It was a text from her husband, Harry, calling her a vindictive devil and accusing her of manipulation. Those who knew Katie immediately feared the worst. What really happened that day? How did a loving mother, a woman who had always radiated warmth, end up in the middle of a violent situation? Was it just a tragic accident, or was something more sinister at play? As the investigation unfolded, a picture began to emerge, a high picture of a seemingly perfect life unraveling, revealing secrets and lies that no one saw coming. Katie lived in a $2 million mansion in Dover, Massachusetts, with her husband, Dr. Ingolf Turk, a respected surgeon and former Olympian. From the outside, their life seemed perfect: wealth, status, a beautiful family. But behind closed doors, things were far from ideal. In fact, their marriage had been on the rocks for some time. They had separated and reconciled more than once, and just days before Katie went missing, they were trying to rebuild their relationship. But what happens when two people can't move past their history? When their love is tangled with resentment, jealousy, and control? What happens when reconciliation turns into something darker? That's what we're about to find out. Stay with me as we uncover the twisted truth behind Katie McClain's disappearance, and the man who might just be responsible. Katie and Harry's story wasn't the typical fairy tale. Katie was a free spirit, the kind of person who embraced life with an open heart. Her world revolved around healing, both emotionally and spiritually. As a Reiki master and psychic medium, she devoted her life to helping others find peace and balance. Katie had a calm, soothing presence, and to her 3 children, Sam, Grace, and Sophie, she was the center of their world. They had been through a lot together, but nothing could have prepared them for what would unfold. Harry, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. A well-established surgeon with a reputation for excellence, he was highly respected in his field. Known for his work in robotic surgery, Harry had made a name for himself, even gracing the billboards of Massachusetts hospitals. But the man behind the white coat had his flaws. He was a product of his past. His life as a former Olympian and military man had shaped him into a man who valued control, precision, and dominance. But as his career flourished, so did his darker tendencies. His marriage to Katie had always been rocky, with moments of passion and reconciliation, but beneath it all, Harry was a man who thrived on power, and that power was slipping from his grasp. Their marriage had always been a push and pull dynamic. Katie, independent and emotionally open, and Harry, controlling and volatile. But it was when things went wrong that the cracks began to show. Their initial separation had started off as a wake-up call for both of them. Katie filed a restraining order after what she claimed was physical abuse. It wasn't the first time, but it was the most serious. And as much as Katie wanted to leave, the ties that bound her to Harry weren't easy to break. She loved him, and despite everything, she wanted things to work. But Harry, he wasn't willing to let go easily. Just weeks before her disappearance, the couple had reconciled. Harry had returned to the house after some time apart, but the old patterns never really went away. They tried to rebuild their relationship, but it was clear to those closest to Katie that it was a fragile piece. They were both carrying too much baggage, too much anger, too many unresolved issues. That morning, on May 15th, 2020, something went terribly wrong. It started with a text message, that would change everything. Kurt, a friend of Katie's, received an alarming message from Harry. The message was disturbing, accusing Katie of manipulation and calling her a vindictive devil. The words struck Kurt hard. He had known Katie for years. She wasn't that person. Kurt immediately forwarded the message to Vanessa Pettigrew, Katie's close friend. Vanessa had always been a pillar of support for Katie, and when she saw the message, her heart sank. She tried calling Katie, but no answer. Then she tried Harry. Still, nothing. Her instincts kicked in. Something was wrong. She had to get to the bottom of it. Vanessa had always known that Katie had a special way of reaching out when she needed help. They had a code word: popcorn. It was simple, but it was their way of knowing that if Katie ever needed her, Vanessa would know. No questions asked, no judgment. But there was no popcorn message, no call for help. Just silence. Vanessa's worry turned into panic. She knew where Harry had been staying at a hotel nearby and drove there immediately. The parking lot was familiar. Harry's Mercedes was parked in its usual spot, and nearby, Katie's Jeep. But there was no response from the hotel room. She tried calling again, but still, no answer. Desperation was starting to take hold. She was now convinced that something had happened, and it was far worse than she'd imagined. Vanessa's next stop was the family home, the $2 million mansion where Harry and Katie had once built a life together. The house with its grand exterior was silent when she arrived. She knocked on the door, then peered through the windows. Inside, she saw Sam, Katie's 13-year-old son. He looked at her through the window, and Vanessa's heart sank further. She knew something was wrong. The children were there, but Katie was not. The house was large, empty, and eerily quiet. Vanessa tried calling out for Katie again, but there was no answer. Her gut told her to call the police. They needed to check the house. As soon as officers arrived, they began to scan the perimeter. They found no sign of Harry, and the house looked deserted. But once inside, the reality of the situation began to set in. The first sign of trouble came when officers found a trail of dark stains on the floor, leading through the house. The stains were spaced apart, and they grew more frequent as they moved toward the kitchen. There, on the counters, were dirty martini glasses and half-empty bottles of liquor. It was clear that something had gone terribly wrong the night before. The trail continued, leading up to the second floor, where they found a door that had been forced open. The damage was significant. It looked like someone had been trying to get inside, and not in a peaceful way. Then, inside the bedroom, the pieces started falling into place. Broken glass littered the floor, and the bed was in disarray. What was most disturbing, however, was the pool of blood on the mattress. Katie's blood. Her purse, with her cell phone still inside, was on the nightstand. The phone was vibrating with notifications, calls, messages, missed moments. No one had heard from Katie in hours, and now the evidence pointed to a violent confrontation. Katie had been through a lot in her life. She had fought for her children, fought for her marriage, and fought for the love she believed in. But on that fateful day, it seemed that fight would be her last. And as the investigation continued, it became clear that the man who should have protected her, the one she had once loved, was at the center of this storm. The search for Katie was just beginning. But with every piece of evidence, the truth of what happened on that night started to surface. The deeper they went, the more disturbing the facts became. Vanessa's heart raced as she sped toward the hotel where Harry had been staying. She didn't know what she was expecting, but she had to check. As she pulled into the parking lot, she saw both cars parked in their usual spots, Harry's Mercedes and Katie's Jeep. Something about the scene felt off, though. It was too still. Vanessa called both of their phones one after the other, her stomach sinking with each unanswered ring. Frustration and fear bubbled inside her, but she refused to panic. Not yet. She had to find Katie. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her next stop was the McClain home on Valley Road, the large, expensive house where Harry and Katie had lived together. It wasn't just a home, though. It was the place where everything had once seemed perfect. But now, it felt like that perfection was falling apart at the seams. When Vanessa arrived, she was relieved to see that all three of Katie's children were at home, safe and sound. Sam, the 13-year-old, looked out from one of the windows, his eyes meeting Vanessa's. But there was no sign of Katie. No sign of Harry either. The house, once full of life, now felt eerily empty. Vanessa didn't waste any time. She called the police, urging them to come and help. It wasn't long before they arrived, and the search of the house began. The officers started by scanning the perimeter of the property. The mansion, with its neatly manicured lawn, didn't seem like a place where anything dangerous could have happened. But as soon as they stepped inside, the sense of unease began to settle in. The house told its own story. As they moved through the rooms, they found signs of a violent confrontation. A trail of blood led from the kitchen, across the floor, and up the stairs. The blood was thin but visible, leaving a disturbing pattern that no one could ignore. Something had happened here, something bad. In the kitchen, the countertops told a different part of the story. 2 martini glasses sat abandoned, their contents long forgotten, and bottles of liquor were half empty. It was clear that the night hadn't ended well. But it wasn't just the spilled alcohol or the broken glasses that stood out, it was the blood, too. It seemed to lead them to the second floor. The door to the bedroom at the end of the hall was damaged, the lock destroyed. It looked like it had been forced open. Inside the bedroom, the disarray was unmistakable. The bed was in a heap, the sheets discarded in a pile on the floor. Shards of broken glass were scattered across the floor, and the smell of spilled liquor lingered in the air. But the most unsettling discovery was the blood on the mattress. The dark stain was unmistakable, and when the officers checked closer, they confirmed what everyone feared: this was Katie's blood. Katie's purse was found on the nightstand, still vibrating with notifications. Her phone was inside, filled with missed calls and messages from family and friends. It was a clear sign that Katie had been unreachable for hours. The volume of messages made it clear something was wrong, and whatever had happened was far beyond anything anyone had expected. As the officers began piecing the puzzle together, Vanessa stood at the door, her heart heavy with a sense of dread. Katie had been a loving mother, a healer, someone who brought peace to those around her. But now, it was as if her life had been ripped apart in an instant. The house, the blood, the empty phone, all the clues pointed to something that couldn't be explained easily. Katie was gone, and the house was full of unanswered questions. What had happened to her? What had led to this violent clash? And more importantly, where was Harry? The answers seemed to be hiding in plain sight, but no one knew exactly where to look. Katie McClain wasn't the kind of person you'd forget after meeting her. She had an aura about her, a calm, soothing presence that made everyone around her feel at ease. As a Reiki Master and psychic medium, she spent her days helping others find peace and healing, not just physically but emotionally and spiritually. Her business, Birch Tree Energy and Healing, was her passion. She believed in the power of energy to heal and used her gift to guide others through their struggles. But Katie wasn't just a healer by profession, she was a mother, a friend, and someone who truly cared for the people in her life. Her free-spirited nature was contagious, and to those closest to her, she was the heart of everything. Katie was a dedicated mother to her 3 children, Sam, Grace, and Sophie. Her love for them was undeniable. She worked hard to create a safe, nurturing environment for her kids, no matter the challenges she faced in her personal life. But despite her calm exterior, Katie had a storm brewing in her marriage. Her relationship with Harry Turk was far from ideal. It wasn't the love story that everyone assumed. Behind the doors of their $2 million mansion, the couple's life was far from blissful. The cracks in their relationship had been there for a long time, but they only seemed to grow wider as time went on. Turk, known as Dr. Ingolf Turk to his colleagues, was a man who had built a reputation for himself. A celebrated surgeon with years of experience, he had once been a prominent figure in the medical world. As a former Olympian athlete, he had lived a life that many people would envy. But that life had begun to fall apart long before Katie's disappearance. Harry had always been a man who prided himself on control. He was physically imposing, tall, athletic, and someone who demanded respect in both his personal and professional life. But behind the polished exterior, things were starting to crumble. Professionally, he faced a malpractice lawsuit that threatened his career. The case involved accusations of him overbilling Medicare for services he hadn't performed, and the damage to his reputation was significant. He settled the lawsuit, but his career was never the same. On top of that, Harry's personal life was in turmoil. His marriage to Katie had always been unstable, with frequent separations and reconciliations. They had moments of happiness, but those were always overshadowed by Harry's need for control and his growing frustration with Katie's independence. He had always been used to being in charge, but Katie didn't fit into the mold he wanted her to. She was strong, independent, and unwilling to let him control her. As their marriage fell apart, Harry turned to alcohol, using it as an escape from the stress of his crumbling career and family life. His drinking became a problem, one that only worsened as time went on. Yet, through all the struggles, Harry still believed he could regain control. He believed that if he could just get Katie back, if he could just fix things, his life would be perfect again. But that sense of control slipped further away with every failed attempt at reconciliation. Katie, on the other hand, had her own battles. She had tried to rebuild her marriage, but the cracks were too deep. Harry had shown her a side of himself that she couldn't ignore. A controlling, volatile side that had made her feel trapped. Yet, despite everything, she still held on to the hope that they could work things out. She wanted to make it work for the sake of their children, for the sake of the family they had created. But no amount of love seemed to change the dynamics of their toxic relationship. By the time May 2020 came around, their marriage had reached a breaking point. They had separated, reconciled, and separated again. It seemed like they couldn't live with each other, but neither could they live without each other. Katie had been hopeful about their most recent attempt to fix things, but deep down, she knew that something had to change, something big, something permanent. Unfortunately, the change came in the form of violence, and everything she had worked for, her healing, her family, her love for Harry, came crashing down in a single, horrific moment. Katie's and Harry's lives couldn't have been more different in the beginning. She was the free spirit, the healer, the one who brought peace to those around her. He was the high-achieving, controlling doctor who had it all figured out. But when everything fell apart, when the cracks became too big to ignore, it became clear that the life they had once shared was nothing like it appeared on the surface. And when Katie went missing, all of those hidden truths, the lies, the abuse, the resentment came to light in the worst way possible. The house, once a place of family gatherings and moments of peace, now felt like a crime scene. As investigators made their way through the home, they began to notice the trail of blood. It wasn't just a spot here or there. It was a path that led them through the kitchen, toward the stairs, and up to the second floor. The trail seemed to tell a story of chaos, of a violent struggle, though the house still looked untouched from the outside. The blood led them to a damaged bedroom door, its frame splintered as if someone had forced their way in. Inside, the room was a mess, broken glass scattered across the floor, a tangle of sheets and bedding discarded haphazardly. But it was the bloodstains on the mattress that stopped them in their tracks. This was no accident. Katie's blood was everywhere, and the violent nature of what had occurred was undeniable. The investigators' suspicions deepened as they searched further. There was more than just the physical damage. There was a sense of urgency in the air. Something had gone terribly wrong. Katie had been in that room, and whatever had happened between her and Harry had escalated quickly. They had known the couple's history, the tension between them, but now the evidence before them painted a much darker picture. This wasn't just a fight, it was something worse. Meanwhile, Harry's behavior wasn't helping the situation. After Katie's disappearance, he was found unconscious in his hotel room. The police arrived to find him in a disoriented state with a high blood alcohol level. But it wasn't just the alcohol that caught the investigators' attention, it was the scratches, the marks all over his body. The kind of wounds you get when you're trying to defend yourself. These weren't just random cuts. Part of me knew it would tear him apart, and another part of me knew that exposing the truth would mean losing the little bit of stability I had left. But the guilt, the shame, it was too much to carry on my own. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay, that I could just sit in the same room as Aaron and Lila and act like nothing had happened between them. How could I ever look at them the same way again? The betrayal felt so raw, so personal, and the idea of exposing them felt like the only way to stop the lies from consuming me. But every time I thought about it, I was paralyzed. I was stuck between two impossible choices. Do I protect my mom from the truth and continue living in a house full of lies? Or do I expose everything, risking everything in the process? Either way, my world was going to shatter, and I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to survive. The stakes kept getting higher. It wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about my entire family being torn apart by the truth. I couldn't keep living like this, pretending that everything was normal when it wasn't, but I didn't know how to make it stop. How could I confront them? How could I confront my mom without destroying what was left of my family? The situation was spiraling, and I felt like I was at the center of it all, stuck in a no-win situation that was eating away at me from the inside out. The days blurred into each other after everything exploded in that living room. I kept expecting it all to go back to normal, for the silence to break, for anything to make sense of it all, but it didn't. The tension in the house was like a physical weight pushing down on me at all times. Every word I exchanged with Aaron or Lila felt like an effort. Even when we were in the same room, it was as if the world had split into two: what was and what had been shattered. My thoughts were consumed by the betrayal, and my interactions with everyone, even my mom, felt tainted. I couldn't get the images of what I had learned out of my mind. The idea of continuing to live under the same roof as Aaron and Lila, knowing what had happened between them, gnawed at me every minute. It was impossible to look at them without feeling disgusted. And then there was my mom. I loved her, I always had, but how could I trust her again? How could I look at her and pretend that everything was fine when I knew she had tried to cover up the truth? She had chosen to protect her idea of the family, rather than face the reality of what had happened in our own home. For a while, I was stuck. I didn't know what to do, where to go, or how to fix any of this. The thought of walking away from everything, my mom, my stepdad, this house I had known for years, seemed impossible. I didn't want to be alone, and I certainly didn't want to destroy the last semblance of family I had. But staying, that felt just as unbearable. How could I live in a house where lies had become the foundation? How could I go on pretending everything was normal when everything had changed? The truth hit me like a wrecking ball. I needed to make a choice, and it had to be mine. The longer I stayed stuck in this limbo, the more it was eating away at me. I had to ask myself, was I going to rebuild this family, knowing the foundation was cracked beyond repair? Or was I going to walk away from it all and start fresh, even if that meant leaving behind everything I had ever known? The idea of leaving was terrifying. I'd spent so long trying to find my place in this family, trying to make it work, but nothing felt real anymore. The love, the loyalty, the trust, everything had been twisted into something unrecognizable. How could I rebuild something that had been broken beyond repair? And even if I tried, would it ever feel the same? I could still see my mom's face, the way she kept asking me to move past it, to let go of the past. But I couldn't. I knew I couldn't forget what had happened, no matter how much I wanted to, no matter how much I loved her. There was no undoing what had been done. The idea of walking away felt like giving up, but staying felt like suffocating. Either way, I was losing something. As time passed, I began to realize something important. Betrayal isn't just about the act itself. It's the aftermath, the mess it leaves behind. The broken trust, the confusion, the hurt that settles into your bones. The hardest part is figuring out what to do next. The choices we make when we're hurt, when we've been betrayed, define who we are going to be moving forward. For so long, I wanted to keep holding on. I wanted to believe that everything could go back to the way it was. But I finally understood sometimes the most important thing you can do is choose yourself. It doesn't mean you have to forget, and it doesn't mean you have to forgive right away. It means that you have to figure out how to heal and grow, no matter what happens. I'm still not sure where I'll go from here. I'm not sure if I'll ever have peace with what happened, or if I'll ever be able to rebuild what was lost. But I do know this: I have to take care of myself first. I have to make the choice to heal, to grow, and to move forward, even if that means leaving behind things I thought I'd never let go of. Maybe one day I'll find peace with the past. Maybe one day I'll learn how to forgive. But right now, the most important thing is that I'm choosing to move forward. I don't know what that looks like, but I know that I can't stay stuck in the wreckage forever. After everything Christopher has been through, it's hard not to wonder, what would you do if you were in his shoes? Would you try to forgive the people who betrayed you? Would you work to salvage the family, even if it means rebuilding trust from the ground up? Or after everything that's happened, is it time to walk away completely and start over? I've been following this story every step of the way, and it's clear that Christopher's pain isn't just about the betrayal itself, it's about the impossible position he's been put in. He's torn between the people he loves, the life he thought he knew, and the truth that's now impossible to ignore. His heart and mind are pulling him in two different directions, and honestly, who can blame him? After being lied to, after feeling like everything he trusted was ripped away, it's a tough call. No one can make that decision for him, but we can all feel the weight of it. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you do if you were Christopher? Could you ever forgive your family for something like this? Or would you walk away knowing that rebuilding might never be the same? It's not easy to know the right answer, and it's not easy to figure out how to heal from a wound this deep. But it's a question worth asking, because we all face moments in life where we have to choose. Do we fight to keep what we've lost, or do we leave it behind and find a new path? I'm really curious to hear what you think. Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts on this situation. Your perspective could help someone else who might be facing something similar. If you're enjoying these kinds of real-life stories, make sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more deep dives into stories of love, betrayal, and the messy process of healing. Your feedback is what keeps these stories going, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So let's continue the conversation, let's keep this space open, and let's keep sharing our thoughts. After all, we all have something valuable to contribute in these difficult conversations. Stay tuned for more updates. This one isn't over yet.